taking outdoor play seriously. I'm Angela Stallard. I'm Service Delivery and Development Manager with PlayBoard, and we've been absolutely delighted at the response to our webinar this morning. We had to close our bookings earlier this week with 100 people registered to attend. So 100 people linking in to hear about outdoor play and to hear some ideas about how best to utilise the school estate for play. Absolutely fabulous, we're delighted. I have joining me this morning Shawnee Mccusker and Bernadette McCann, two of PlayBoard staff members, and they're going to present to you today, and I'll introduce you to them in just a moment. With 100 people joining us, to make the session run as smoothly as possible, I'd ask you all to turn your videos off and your mute on. And that just helps us with the interference. With so many people logged on, we want to try and get through this with as less interference and as less glitches as we possibly can. I've had my own technical difficulties here this morning. Working from home is quite a challenge. So yes, your video off and your mute on, please. Okay, we do encourage you though to use the chat function throughout the session to communicate with us and with each other. Throughout the session, we will be putting up links into the chat function. Don't worry if you don't catch them. We'll send you them via email following the session. So the format or agenda for today is, if we can just turn mutes on, that would be really helpful, please. Thank you. The format on the agenda for today is I'm going to invite Shawnee to speak first. Shawnee's going to present to you for about 20 minutes or so, and then Bernadette will present to you for another 20 or 25 minutes. During the presentations, we invite you to pose some questions or comments in the chat function. And I'm going to try and grab those questions, a few of those out, and we'll address those at the end. So if all goes according to plan, we'll have some time following the sessions, following the presentations, to pose some of your questions to Shawnee and Bernadette. So do use the chat function there to give us those questions. We're trying to make this interactive as we possibly can in the world of Zoom, without, as I say, creating lots of technical glitches. So do put your comments, engage with us through chat and give us some questions, but just make sure you keep your mutes on for us, please. So just before I hand over to Shawnee, we wanted to take a moment to tell you about a piece of work that we're progressing with the Education Authority at the moment. Some of you might have seen it already. It's a survey capturing the voices of children and young people aged between 5 and 18 across Northern Ireland. And it's really focused on hearing children's experiences of play, education, and I suppose of life in general during lockdown. We've had almost 400 responses to date, which is absolutely brilliant. But there's always room for more. So if the survey is still open, we'd encourage any of you who have access to children and young people, whether that be your own children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, whatever, do encourage them to complete the survey for us. I'm told there's a lovely playful prize as a carrot, as a thank you to one lucky person who completes the survey for us. Jimmy has shared the link there. You've seen it coming through on chat. The easiest way to find the survey is to go onto PlayBoard's website and go onto our news page, and you'll find information on the survey in there. We've done some early analysis of the survey in terms of our topic or our discussion here this morning. So I'm going to quickly share with you some of those early findings. So when we asked children about school, 91% said that what they were missing most about school was seeing their friends. 78% said they missed playing in the playground. And 64% of children said that they're looking forward to come back to school. And again, re-engaging with their friends was the most important factor for them. Those friendships and play opportunities are really what they're missing, and it's really, really important to them. So it's really something for you to consider when we return back to school in whatever format come August, September. We got some really startling or sad, I suppose, answers when we asked children, was there anything that they were worried about in terms of going back to school? One little boy said he was really worried that no one would remember him. Lots of children indicated that they were worried about getting sick. They're worried about being split up from their friends and about the new rules in school around COVID restrictions and about not knowing what to do. When we asked what could make that better, that transition better for children, given that for some of these children they will have been out of school for 5 months, some of the solutions that they're coming up with. So they're saying, allow us more playtime, let us get to know our friends again. Provide a keep in touch session or visit before we go back to school, just so we can see what it's like. So they're anxious about what school's going to look like. They know it could look different and they're anxious about what that actually looks like. Give us a chance to be with our friends and group us with our friends. So they're hearing about discussions about pods and about bubbles, and they're really worried that they're going to be split up from their friends. So give us a chance to be with our friends and group us with our friends and help us get to know one another again. So some really common threads running throughout the responses so far, particularly around friendships and around play, which leads us very, very nicely into today's session. I'm going to hand you over now to Shawnee Mccusker. Many of you, I'm sure, will know Shawnee. She is, I suppose, our school's representative in PlayBoard, and she's responsible for our Positive Playgrounds programme and our Taking Outdoor Play Seriously Quality Assurance programme, amongst lots of other things, but those are the two things that are relevant to our discussion here this morning. So Shawnee, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Angela. Morning, everybody, and you're all very welcome to this strange out of my comfort zone presentation. However, I think everybody's in the same predicament, and I need to talk out loud. I know that I have a very low voice, so you might find me dipping in and out. I'm really trying my best to be loud. So returning to school in 2020 will be a time for change for all school communities, especially our children and young people. And I think Angela's information now at the start really highlights some of the concerns and anxieties that children may be worrying about before schools open. PlayBoard have been continuing to urge that now more than ever, educationalists and policymakers should embrace the benefits of play for children's transition back to school. This has been supported throughout the pandemic globally with numerous academic papers, publications and discussions. And we hope that today's presentation will support school principals and staff in utilising their grounds for the current situations, and in particular that it will be of benefit for developing your outdoor spaces for play and learning. To create spaces where children can be afforded the time to reconnect with their friends, their peers, teachers, and settle back into just the routine of school life. So the main aims: to support primary schools in reopening given the current measures and restrictions, to highlight the importance and benefits of play to ease our children back to school, and transforming school grounds for play and learning. I'm going to share some experiences or some examples of other schools' experiences and good practice, and give you some ideas of how you can draw upon them and implement them into your own school grounds. And then Bernadette's going to come on at the end to promote learning outside the classroom. So the Northern Ireland Guidance, the Department of Education, the Public Health Agency and the Department of Health have been working in conjunction to make the ease back safe, and they came up with the Restart Education Programme. It's made up of 6 or 7 key principles. in that it's evidence informed. Going back will be dependent on the circumstances and evidence, not dates. So as we know, on these uncertain times, anything could change between now and August and September. So setting strict dates may not work. It also has health and safety as a priority to ensure and seek to get staff, the children back to school as safe as possible, and putting all the measures required in order for that to happen. It's a transitionary service model, and this is where they're going to, is it the new normal? They want to make sure that not just getting schools open happens and that people are safe, but that education will remain effective, that effective learning will still take place and be assured. It's a phased back to school approach, and phasing and prioritising will occur, and this is to mitigate transferring the infection. And with kids being so young, it would be really hard to bring all children back at the same time and try to social distance them, or we have too many bubbles in the one place. Non-prescriptive plan, like most things, there's no one size fits all. Every school circumstances will be different. The number of children that you have in your classrooms, the size of your outdoor space, and any other extra spaces within your facility. There's guidance will be supplemented with a suite of additional documents. These will come in the form of looking at the curriculum, looking at the well-being of staff and children, transport arrangements, and catering and lunchtime routines. There's still a lot of work to be done. Helping the children understand the public health measures will be challenging for schools as well. And reflecting on what Angela's just said about how kids are feeling and what's coming through the children's survey. School staff can use symbols, posters, social stories and videos to help the children and become aware of what lies ahead of them. Ensure proper hygiene is catered for, hand washing, sanitising centres, and possibly toilet routines might be required, given that they're suggesting all the children would use the same toilets. There's still iggly-piggly things that need to be sorted out. Promote good sneezing and coughing etiquette. Premise and resources need to be cleaned daily and according to meeting measures required. And introduce children to their protective bubbles. And they're saying at the minute, staff are to maintain a 2 metre social distancing. This may change again by the time the schools open in August / September. With younger children especially, the use of songs and rhymes to get these messages across, keeping it child friendly and playful to help them settle back in. Use creative ways also to divide the boundaries and the zoned areas or the restricted areas where you don't wish children to access. The likes of bunting, coloured cones, child-friendly art would all be very useful. So that's the hard part, I think, for schools to have to come to terms with the real big change in just actually opening the gates and returning to school begins. There's a lot of coordinating, there's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of making decisions about the phasing and staffing of that. However, there's a thing called play. So what is this thing called play? Play might be the most useful resource that you have in easing children back into your school grounds. Playing is central to children's physical, mental, social and emotional well-being and is enshrined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 31. And anybody that has worked with PlayBoard before will know that Article 31 is at the core of our work and it always comes up. Play allows children to develop their inner resource and build resilience in difficulties and uncertainties and experience through crisis. So it's probably the most natural medium for helping children to self-regulate and digest what's going on and to get the coping skills that they need to carry on. Play is the most natural, active and often unplanned process in which thinking, feeling and doing can flourish. When children are playing, they are able to be inventive and creative, the most natural way they learn. I don't know, some of you may have attended a webinar recently organised by PlayBoard and the National Children's Bureau. It was called Reimagining Education, very interesting, and it had a primary focus on children's mental health and well-being and the transition back to school. And Dr. Helen Dodds actually asked during the presentation that education departments consider giving children time and putting children's mental health and well-being ahead of academic achievements and intellectual development. This quote is from her. We need to be thinking about children's emotional well-being before we put any pressure on them in terms of their education and their intellectual development in order to protect their mental health and allow them to develop into healthy adults. I think that anybody that works with children knows if we have children around us or in our classrooms who are happy and settled and content, their readiness to learn comes naturally. If we have children in our classrooms who are anxious, upset, maybe grieving, they're going to need some time before they can start thinking about learning or engage at any sort of level. In situations of conflict or disaster, opportunities for play have significant therapeutic and rehabilitative role in helping children recover a sense of normality and joy after their experience of loss, dislocation and trauma. And it has been a traumatic experience. It's been a traumatic experience for me as an adult, and never mind children. We can find ways to develop a more responsive and flexible structure to adapt these needs of learners, provide more opportunity for outdoor play and their learning. Schools can afford children time, permission and spaces for play. Permission to be noisy, to be messy, to be fast, to be loud, to move around. Permission to control the content and the intent of their play. So less structure is really what's required. They can afford them the time in their day that is not programmed or planned, and they can do their own play thing, which could be anything. Whenever you see kids playing. You can afford them the space where they can play freely with a variety of resources, equipment, and their friends, and albeit that we might have to hold back on the amount of resources initially starting back, regards restrictions and maintenance of resources, but we could still be very creative in what we do allow them to do and what we can provide them with. So getting back to school, all the evidence is showing that the coronavirus is less contagious outdoors. That's probably the first thing that I would consider thinking about and planning for, because it's the least risky. So think about games and sports and activities that children can do individually or in pairs or in their protective bubbles. Tennis, junior golf, jumping, skipping, hopping, two balls, one of my old favourites, and lots of other games that can be adapted for small numbers of children within their protective bubbles. Try to adopt a playful approach in responding to children's needs and wishes. Ask the children to come up with games. What do they like doing? What could we facilitate with resources in relation to their own choices? Have simple supply of equipment and things to play with that can be easily cleaned after use or in between use if this is still a required measure. So some tips of how you might be able to draw on what other schools have done and have achieved and learn from their good practice. These are some of my top schools receiving their award. The Taking Outdoor Play Seriously award was achieved after they had made major differences and improvements to the quality of play in their school grounds. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and hopefully you can take ideas from it and implement it yourself. So to set the scene of what it actually is, it was based on the learning from positive playgrounds, and that highlighted that there was a need for more significant and meaningful change in our school playgrounds. Positive playgrounds has been delivered now over 14 years from PlayBoard, and I think we must be touching close to 300 schools, maybe. I haven't counted in a while. And it was a great programme in helping schools to change the play on offer in their schools. It was aimed at non-teaching staff initially, and as we progressed it and evaluated after a few years, we decided that it needed a whole staff approach in order for there to be any meaningful changes. And from it, then we kept thinking about we need to get something more robust, something that when schools do make a wonderful effort or change in their outdoor play, it would be lovely if they could have recognition for it. And that's how we came up with the idea of an award. Because like any award, there's a set of standards that need to be met and implemented. And it's through implementing these standards that the play and the outdoor space is transformed. But more importantly, the ethos of play in the school is transformed to a more play work approach. And that was the biggest achievement and outcome for myself. Because we could have great play spaces, but not necessarily great play work or play offer within them. So the Quality Award has developed a systematic process for reviewing and improving the quality of children's play experiences. It aims to deepen staff, play workers' knowledge and expertise of play. It aims to create the right practice and environment in which children can play freely and develop and learn. It considers both the strengths and areas of improvement and identifies issues that can be addressed on an individual basis. So it's a bit like the Education Start programme, I suppose. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And some schools are set on fantastic sites and have great outdoor spaces, where other schools may have a tarmac space and a fence around it. Their challenge for achieving the award, the TOPS award, is much greater than those grounds naturally lend themselves to it. So part of my job then is how can we get some of that natural play into your tarmac space. The benefits of play in schools is widely recognised, and I personally feel that from experience that children's learning in the classroom and whatever themes or topics are being covered in the classroom is most definitely extended to their play in the outdoors when they go out of break and lunchtime. And if you ever observe children during playtimes, you can see your topics and themes or whatever interests they may have out of school hours being extended and played in the playtimes in the school grounds. Through play, children acquire knowledge, practice new skills, providing a foundation for complex processes and academic success. Lack of playtime impacts negatively on children's performance in the classroom. And yet, my findings from work with positive playground schools was that there's no legislation regards our children's playtimes in schools, which I think is a bit sad. I would love it to be. There's a recommended time of 60 minutes per day. However, my findings were that this varied greatly, with the lowest being probably around 15 minutes. And I'm not referring to break or lunch. That was a combined 15 minutes on a school day, which is probably the worst few scenarios. On the other high level of the 60 minutes, again, there was a low number that could accommodate 60 minutes. Thank goodness the majority of schools were somewhere in the middle. But after TOPS, we're moving closer towards the 60 minutes, which was brilliant. I know one school, Rathcoole Primary, they increased their playtime at lunchtime by 20 minutes extra, and the teachers became involved in that. So that was fantastic. The World Health Organization identifies playtimes as being an important opportunity to increase daily physical activity through unstructured play. And we do all want our kids to be physical. We do all want to address the physical issues that they have for their health. But by just letting them play and giving them spaces to play, the physical activity will occur naturally. Creswell highlighted the role of play in schools in reducing stress and increasing self-esteem. And what could be more beneficial to the kids returning to school than increased self-esteem and helping them deal with their stress. I value school playgrounds in relation to their quality when they have a varied and interesting environment that maximises the potential for socialising, creativity, resourcefulness and challenge. A place where children feel free to play on their own way and in their own terms. And challenge in play is essential. Sometimes our school sites or playgrounds can become so sterile that we remove the challenge and the risk for them to keep our kids safe, whereas they really need the challenge and risk in order to be able to develop those self-preservation skills, I call it, where they can make the proper choices for themselves independently. They're always going to have adults there to make that for them. Also, the thing about risky play and children's development is they suffer the consequences of actions when things don't go their way. There's huge learning by that as well. We use the risk-benefit approach, but I'm going to touch on that later on. So how can we help you to make your schools into better play spaces for children's play and learning on their return to school? These are taken from some of the standards that schools have to meet in order to achieve the TOPS award. An outdoor play policy. An outdoor play policy will provide the framework for your whole school team to work from. Within an outdoor play policy, I would have things like the school's missionary statement on play. How does your school value play? I also would have in it what the children are allowed to do as well as what they're not allowed to do. What the adults are allowed to do as well as what the adults aren't allowed to do. Because in the past, current practice of supervising playgrounds would be more of a supervisory role of policing, reinforcing rules, and sort of stopping the children from going in areas that have high play value. So good play policy is essential. Action plans. This always makes me smile. Action plans for all 3 school terms. And yes, I'm talking winter, outdoor play action plan. Before we did the TOPS programme, for all the years I've been working with schools, I have never seen an outdoor winter action plan for play at break and lunch times. And what was really interesting about this, we had to get the kids involved because they were coming up with ideas that were even way over our heads regards pretend campfires, dens somewhere that you could go into because it's winter time and it's cold. And another interesting was using the elements as resources for play as opposed to barriers for play. So there was still water play even in winter, even if it turned in the ice. So some real interesting stuff came out in our action planning, but it's really good practice and it provides again then the resources for your school to be repeating play term on term. We recommend that you don't have to change the whole layout of your play. It's the resources within your play areas that would change according to the seasons. And then school playground audit is a good place to start with your baseline. Where are you at the minute? Where do you want to go? We carry out baselines to help identify where schools' weaknesses are and where their strengths are, and then help to fill in those gaps alongside the staff. Zoning the playground. A good place to start off if you're going to get into some serious playground development is look at your outdoor space as a blank canvas and then decide what zones you and your staff and your children would like to see out there. So you start populating it with little areas. So maybe imaginary play corner over there, a messy play area there. You might have areas already developed in your school grounds that you just haven't opened up for play before. That could be a ready-made zone, just by allowing access into it. Review of restricted areas, sort of touched on that there already. Why are these areas restricted? if you have gardens, if you have ponds, if you have lovely seating areas and landscaped areas. Wild areas are a great resource for children's natural play. Why are they restricted during break and lunch times? Is it possible to access these and open them up for children's play and learning? And one of the biggest barriers I've experienced in having those conversations with schools in the past would be there's not enough human resources. There's not enough of us to be watching the kids and open all these. We could never mind them or keep our eyes on them or keep them safe. Well, actually, once you open them up and teachers and supervisors go on that journey of change, you will be amazed at how capable children are of managing their own play and how the role of the adult can change. I think it's really a bit about trust. You need to trust your kids. There are certain things that kids can play where the adults just need to be able to see them from a distance. You don't need to be in their zone. I always feel more comfortable getting close to the faster, the sporty type activities, the physical, because there's physical contact, there's rough and tumble maybe, and I might place myself close to there because there could possibly be a higher risk element in the play. However, if children are engaged in sensory play, sitting down, chatting to their friends or dancing on a stage, an adult doesn't necessarily have to be in that zone. You can keep your eye on them from the distance. So it's that baby steps, opening up bits at a time, evaluating it, monitoring it, see how you get on, and then open up another bit. And that's how it can be achieved. It also takes a lot of the busyness of kids running around tarmac squares aimlessly. Agreed boundaries and use of equipment. I find this really useful as well because sometimes we have expectations of how kids should play with certain resources. I think in particular one of the things in my ears is we've heard it so many times, play properly, or that's not what that's for. And I'm seeing a skipping rope here as I think about that, because children take skipping ropes and play every which way but skip. And sometimes us adults can be reinforcing that. That's for skipping rope, skip with it or play properly. And really once they've taken that into their hand, it becomes a prop for play and is triggered off some sort of imaginary play cue to them. So agreed boundaries and use of equipment is really useful so that all staff are giving the children the same messages and permissions, I suppose. Storage and accessibility. Really recommend highly. If you can have outdoor storage, it cuts the workload in half for the staff on duty. Children can access it more independently as well, and it means that it will be accessible more throughout the year. But we'll not be looking out the window and going, oh, it might rain, we'll not take stuff out today. If children are out there and resources are out there, they will access the equipment independently, and also should be responsible for putting it back. Trying to get them to take ownership of their play, and not just the playfulness side of it, but in managing it. Maintenance and hygiene may be required now also because of the new measures, so be mindful of that when you come to resource and play zones and areas. So school grounds baseline. This is Ballymaccash Primary School. Ballymaccash very kindly, I did positive playgrounds with them. Just around the same time as I felt POPs was ready to go live or be piloted. Very exciting time in my career. And I sort of ran past them at the training session, and they seemed very eager and very enthusiastic to come on board and pilot it with PlayBoard. So it was a wonderful experience, and we tweaked it and we changed it as we went along. But they were very enthusiastic, and I still to this day thank them hugely for their commitment. But like most schools, they have the smashing space outside, fabulous grounds, lots of green open space. However, at their baseline, the children were segregated into their key stages and allocated specific tarmac playgrounds. I was told that sometimes the kids could get on the grass in the drier weather, which with our climate, you know, is probably a month or more out of the whole school year. So we began to develop the playgrounds. We set up a great play working group of teachers and classroom assistants who helped coordinate this and drive it forward. At the heart of the process was our children's participation. They're at the core of all the work that we do, you probably know, because their voices and their input is crucial if we're making decisions with them. So all schools seem to have school councils and school eco teams, and they're a cracking starting point for me to start my conversations with kids. And then what they do is they go out after they've met with themselves, they go out and they carry out surveys and questionnaires and conversations with the wider pupils in the school and bring back all the ideas and all the issues that kids are having during playtimes. And then they're used in a real meaningful way to inform the action plans that the schools are working on. This group of children also were very proactive in their roles and took it very seriously and took it upon themselves to encourage parental and wider community engagement through posters and newsletters, requesting items, recycled goods, and resources for the start of the playground development. The role of the adult throughout this, when we talk about the role of the adult for play, we're talking about it from the role of the adult from a play work approach. So creating an environment where children feel free and empowered to take control and direct their play. So letting a child-led approach be within the free time for play. Resist temptation to initiate activities and mediate disputes. We all want them to gain conflict resolution skills. I know that comes within your curriculum, and play is a really natural medium for letting that happen. You know, taking turns, I had that first, sorting out who's going to be in your team, and negotiating rules and cheating and all those things, all very normal, typical children's behaviour. Observing children's use of the space, materials and resources to inform the planning, and ensure children manage resources and equipment, and I touched on that earlier, helping them to take ownership of their playtimes, getting equipment in, getting equipment out, and feeding back how the play's going, letting them evaluate their play experiences is crucial. Adopt a risk-benefit approach for your play provision, and this is really to protect yourself from litigation. Like everything, we're always afraid of being sued or the blame game society that we unfortunately live in. And the risk-benefit approach has been recognised as part of your health and safety against litigation. It's the way we look at the old way we would have risk assessed in the past as a play organisation. I play with children all the time, and indeed playing with adults through some of the training. We would have used a scoring system. This has been replaced by risk-benefit, where we've removed the scoring system. The potential harm or risks stay the same when kids are playing, but instead of just giving it a score of high, medium or low, we've replaced it now with the benefits. And the benefits always outweigh the risks. There's always more benefits to why kids are playing something than the potential risk or harm that could occur. And it comes in two halves, I suppose. One is your paper record, your primary risk-benefit form. And I do recommend that you complete one of these because that is your evidence that you've carried it out, your written record. However, equally important, if not more important, is the dynamic side of it. And that's your doing. We do it every day. We mightn't call it risk assessment or dynamic risk assessment, but we're continuously risk assessing how the kids are playing, where they're playing, and how high up they're going, and redirecting them or supporting them. But you would have no proof of that if, God forbid, there was an accident, and say, well, I do dynamic risk assessment. First thing you'll be asked for, show me what that looks like. So that your paper record is your protection. And I would advise to carry it out. Lots more information I can share with you on that if you contact me if you're interested in acquiring form, further reading on it, I can share that with you. So just to finish off, I'm going to show you an example how a school playground can grow and develop. Lots of investment financially is not necessarily needed, and we're not big fans of, finding thousands of pounds for fixed equipment and installing playgrounds and the such within school grounds. It's about being creative, and one of our main resource toolkits are the loose parts, and you'll see how they're used throughout Ballymacash. So this was the start, baby steps. I'm sorry the photos are a bit foggy, but it was very misty that day. I was invited out to take pics. They planted a little woodland down in the corner. That was 4 years ago. I've been out of the school since, and already it has started to grow and flourish. So by about another 4, 5 years, maybe they'll have a proper little woodland down in the corner of the grass area for play. And children play in it at the minute. They've also created the other bottom one, a little seating sort of chill out zone with a sail on it for shelter. And again, that's down at the bottom of the grass. That's another place where kids can take themselves out of the busyness of the physical stuff if they wish to. They put chalkboards all down the pathways where kids can graffiti, chalk, draw. Sometimes they add paper to it. Sometimes they put water and brushes out with it. Quite open-ended. And then they put in a mud kitchen that also doubles up as an outdoor classroom. It's accessible for all age groups, primary 1 to P7. And the kids change this throughout the 3 terms, those action plans we spoke about. So it's not always a mud kitchen. Sometimes it's a sensory kitchen with things that they find in their parents' bathrooms and the pound shop and stuff. Sensory's like what they referred it to as the body shop. So that was very creative. At Halloween, it becomes the scary kitchen. So the big gloop and all sorts of things going on. So really useful item. And then the play zones that I mentioned regards loose parts. You'll see how many zones can be created by just using the loose parts. And they're free, usually. But very open-ended for play. Music stations, boys are constructing stuff. Small world play, sensory play. Boys making car ramps there and obstacle courses. Lots of ways children can change them around and adapt the environment to suit their playing needs. Lovely thing as well is seeing that barrier of tarmac spaces or school playgrounds being removed from the schools where children are free and able to flow around the grounds now more independently and engage with whatever it is that they're interested in. So to finish off, what are the main outcomes from schools? To invest in your outdoor play areas and make these changes that we've just shared. Enhancing the use of outdoor space for play has been shown to bring a number of benefits for schools and pupils. Opportunities to incorporate outdoor play activities and curricular teaching, supporting the learning process. It's shown to improve behaviour, not as many children standing outside your office when the lunch bell goes or standing outside a wall and where they've been stood out for time out. Concentration and attention to tasks when they return to school has been proven, and improving the health and well-being of children and physical health and well-being, but as well as that at this time, their mental health and well-being, and their emotional health, and providing children with that direct connection to a natural environment, because we must remember not all children have the privilege of gardens or green spaces where they live. So school may be the one place where we can introduce them to nature through their play in a meaningful way. Let me share useful links with you throughout the presentation. I would just like to thank you all for coming and listening, and I hope that you'll find some useful tips for developing your outdoor play for the return to school. I want to finish on one note that I meant to add in and I forgot. I would like to think of myself as a play champion for our stage 2 children on returning back to school, because I think that their play needs are sometimes not met as much as our younger children. And yet in all the evidence of what I've been gathering over the last number of years, prove that we give them those opportunities for all the types of play we offer our younger children. They will have fun and engage at a very high level, and it helps compensate for the pressures that they may be under with academic pressures. So I'll leave you with that food for thought. Thank you all. Bye. Over to you, Bernadette. Thank you.
Over to me, Shawnee. It's Angela.
Angela.
Thank you, Shawnee. Some really good tips there for taking outdoor play seriously. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to run on through. Some great comments and questions coming through on the chat function. I just encourage you to keep throwing in your questions and comments to us there. A couple of people asking about the slides and about the links. If you missed it at the beginning, we are going to share the links with you after today's session, and we do plan to put together a report which will include the slides for you, so you will get those if you'd registered to attend. We'll be emailing them out to you after the session. So without further ado, Bernadette, you've got about 20 minutes if we want to leave a few minutes at the end for questions. Yeah, Bernadette's one of our newer members of staff. In fact, she's actually joined us during lockdown. So she's been getting to know us and the organisation remotely, which has been fun. Bernadette's an experienced teacher, and I know you're going to find her input also very, very valuable. So over to you, Bernadette.
No problem. Just checking sure you can see and hear me, Angela.
Yes, you're fine. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today. My name is Bernadette McCann, and I am a Play Participation Officer with PlayBoard. I'm also a qualified primary school teacher in Northern Ireland, and I've taught a range of classes from nursery right up to primary 7. I recognise the outdoor environment as an extension of the classroom and have used play as a useful way to ignite learning and make it more memorable for children. And I suppose this passion really stemmed for me from my own childhood. And if you reflect on your own childhood yourselves, I'm sure you will immediately be drawn to some play activities or some way of outdoor learning that you may have experienced. So there are many benefits to outdoor play and learning that you can bring to your classroom. First of all, the experience of natural world. The outdoor world is so diverse. No 2 lessons will be the same, no 2 days will be the same, no 2 minutes will be the same. Things are changing all the time, be it the clouds, be it the birds, the leaves, resources that are available, etc. It will allow children to explore and promote their natural curiosity, and also allow them to ask those I wonder questions and then discover the answers through discovery, experimentation and exploration. There's lots of evidence out there that suggests it improves mental and physical well-being. It allows children to move in a variety of ways, crawling, jumping, rolling, whatever, and that will in turn develop their gross motor skills. And when they're manipulating objects such as loose parts or conkers, natural resources, that will again develop their fine motor skills, which we all know are so important for their early writing skills. Being outdoors also releases dopamine and serotonin. These are known as the happy hormones. I think this is really, really important and a key point as we come out of lockdown. It's something that we need to consider, the social and emotional well-being of our children. So getting outdoors in any way we can to promote that through learning and play would be really beneficial. In terms of educational attainment, again, there's lots of studies, particularly in Denmark at the moment, that suggests outdoor learning and play is really, really beneficial for educational attainment. 2 studies that I particularly enjoyed looking at were from Illinois and from Curtin. Illinois indicated that children were actually less likely to be distracted outdoors. I know that's a huge fear for teachers and for staff and parents, that when the children go outdoors, they will be distracted by the environment around them. However, this study found that they were actually more engaged in their learning, so that's really positive. Another study then from Curtin University also found that children were more creative outdoors. Within that study, they looked at classes both in the UK and in Australia, classes that were taught indoors and outdoors. And they found that the classes that were outdoors were actually more creative in their writing, especially. And the children used more figurative language and poetry and creative writing activities. Lastly, one of the main benefits I feel that we should really be drawn on at the moment is that it's fun. When children transition back into school, be it in August or September, it'll help us to build that nice rapport with them. It'll help them settle in better. And it's not only fun for the children, but it's also fun for us as adults too. We need to look after our own well-being as well to be able to support them fully. And as we all know, if activities are fun, children are more likely to want to repeat them. They're more likely to engage as well. So what if? I want you to have a wee think about the following questions. What if we took a multi-curricular approach to learning? What if we changed the landscape of our outdoor environment to support learning through play? What if access to our outdoor play and learning was an entitlement and not a privilege? These are all important questions that I'm sure we're asking ourselves now. They're more important now than they ever have been before. With COVID-19 and all of the restrictions that come with it, we now need to reflect on our practice. We need to think about how we teach, where we teach, and when we teach. It's something for us all to think about, and over the next few slides, I will introduce some tips for you on how to bring your classroom outside and how the curriculum can be taught through play. We know that children learn best when a multisensory approach is adopted, and there's no better way to achieve this than through play-based activities in the outdoor environment. So how do you get started? First of all, you would need to complete your risk-benefit assessments, as Shawnee has previously talked about. You would need to prepare a variety of things. Firstly, you would need to prepare resources. In terms of resources, they would need to be COVID-friendly, either resources that can easily be cleaned or can be disposed of quickly after use. An example of something that you might want to use is loose parts. They're really easily sourced and then they can be easily disposed of afterwards. In terms of setting up, I know in the younger classes, you might be thinking, I'll never have time to set all this up. I formed very close links whenever I was in school with the primary 7s through reading buddies, but they also helped me set up a variety of lessons and they really enjoyed it as well. And it gives them a sense of responsibility and leaves a nice legacy for them after they leave. Perhaps if you're in the older classes yourselves, you might want to think of something like Bubble of the Week, whereby they could be going out and setting up, of course supervised by a classroom assistant or an adult. You would need to prepare the staff, parents and children. This is maybe a whole new environment for them, learning outdoors. I know that sometimes parents are a little bit hesitant whenever they hear about children going outdoors and learning outdoors. However, now is the time to do it. All of the evidence that we have suggests that children are actually safer outdoors with the COVID. So it's a really good opportunity for us to really work on that and work with that. I suppose one tip I would have is to keep parents and staff informed at all times and share your risk benefits with them. Make them aware of every step that you're taking and the benefits that it'll bring to their children. Finally, and probably the hardest thing, it was definitely the hardest thing for me, is to prepare yourself. This is something that I really, really had to work on. Resist that temptation. Just as children have an innate desire to play, we have an innate desire to teach. We have an innate desire to help and support when children are struggling. I've stood back and watched as children put a plank on, and I know it's not at the right angle and it will definitely fall off their obstacle course. But by standing back, I allowed those children to become critical thinkers. I allowed them to problem solve. I allowed them then to come up with creative solutions totally independently, and it took their learning beyond the curriculum. Something else you might want to consider before you take your learning outside is attention grabbers. Your voice will travel so much better indoors than it will outdoors. So I always use an instrument, just a tambourine, and that way you can play the tambourine and the children will stop and know that you need their attention. So a typical lesson format then within school would be your starter, main, plenary and reflections. I'm just going to briefly talk you through the way that I would have done outdoor play. Again, this is entirely flexible and you can work with it whatever way to suit your children's needs. So as a starter, I actually always would have started inside, where I would have reviewed the expectations I had for the children. We perhaps would have discussed the activities we were going to do, or maybe I would have shown them a demonstration via video. For the main then, you could do it in a variety of ways. You could have a whole class activity outdoors. You could have the children working on a carousel of activities, or you could have them working and playing throughout the learning zones. Finally then, probably the most important aspect of teaching is your plenary and your reflections. We're so good in school at doing what worked well and even better with our children. So why can't we translate that outdoors? Get our children's reflections. They've got such creative minds, they might have new ideas that will extend their play and learning. I just want to reiterate the fact that lesson plans are very much working documents, and they should be adapted to suit the needs of your children at all times. So we'll move on to literacy then. Children are continually developing their literacy and language skills when playing with peers and adults. Play zones created as part of the TOPS programme, including creative zones, stages and mud kitchens, allow children to develop narratives and express themselves in a creative way. Here's an example of that, where a little girl in my class called Lily, she engaged independently at the creative zone, which had a variety of mark making materials available to her, and she came up with this amazing story. Lily was then able to move and progress her play and learning on by taking this to the stage, and she actually performed it out for us all with her peers. That was really, really lovely. And Lily was 3, by the way, so excellent learning from Lily here. So in terms of phonics and word building, children can use free and found natural resources to build letters and words. For example, there's an example 2 just on the side, and this can be extended for older children as well with spellings from their lists, spelling lists or tricky words. Hopscotches are so adaptable. Most schools have them, really, really easy to use and really, really playful and fun to use as a learning tool as well. So here's an example of how they can be used to support the learning of initial sounds and high frequency words. Again, can be extended for older children where they get to use their spelling lists or perhaps tricky words that they've found. But there are many other ways you can use hopscotches. You just need to be creative. For example, you might want to include it in science when they're learning about properties. You might want to include it in numeracy for multiplication, division and fractions. What will you put in your hopscotch? Just have a quick little think. What would work well for your class? Would it be shapes, colours? It'll be entirely down to your class and their needs. So this is a little word wheel. Very, very adaptable resource, very quick and easy to do. I would have used it both indoors and outdoors. So the children actually would have the opportunity to build words using the letters inside. So S-A-W would make saw. However, if they wanted to make saws, there's only one S, S-A-W-S, so they can't do it because there's only one S. So now, really quickly, because I know we're tight for time, I would like you to have a go using the chat function. Could you please enter as many words as you can using the following letters? I'm going to have a wee look at them as we go along. Some rhyming words in there, good job. Chops, making me hungry. Fantastic. Shop. Show, that's a good one. Fantastic. Some fantastic words coming in there. I'm going to have to move on, I'm afraid, because we are tight for time today. However, this activity could be then extended. You could have the children keeping a tally of their scores and maybe transferring that then onto a graph. Another way you could use this quick and simple activity is as a spin the bottle, whereby you could have a bottle in the middle and the children have to find something beginning with that word. They have to make something beginning with that word. Or if you're using it with the older children, perhaps you could do some classification work where they have to think of an adjective beginning with a certain letter, or a verb or a noun. Okay. So in the natural play zone, children love to make things like this. I made Shelley. I really enjoyed the activity myself. And there are lots of interesting ways that you can incorporate this into your literacy. Here's some suggestions. Can you write some instructions detailing how you made me? Can you think of any words to describe me? Can you write a story about me, and perhaps you could even perform it at the stage? Can you transform me into something new? All really exciting and engaging ways. The other thing I'd just like to add here is the temptation is there just to give the children a sheet and get them to do it and not actually make Shelley. But in making Shelley, children are taking ownership over their learning. They're enjoying it, and that's the way you'll get them engaged and hooked in, and they'll be much more willing to participate in the follow-up activities. So reading for pleasure. Something else you might want to consider for your outdoor environment is an outdoor library. I know at the moment books maybe aren't on your radar in terms of COVID friendly. Perhaps you could use laminated poems, which can easily be wiped down afterwards. So I want you now to think about where you like to read. I like to read on my sofa with a cup of tea in hand and my feet up. Yet we still expect our children to read on hard desks and hard chairs. Why don't we create chill out zones? Chill out zones created by tops are the perfect setting for children to relax and get lost in a book. Perhaps you could even take your guided reading group outdoors. They could sit on logs, tires, and enjoy the chill out zone as well. Moving on to numeracy. Sorry, I'm going quite fast through these. I know I'm very aware of time. So construction and loose part zones are particularly useful for supporting children in developing skills in numeracy, including measure, balance, comparing length, capacity and weight, 2D and 3D shapes, problem solving, and developing that mathematical language. I know whenever I was in nursery, I was in awe of the children. They were using these mathematical skills and language in a really practical way. I think even if you added measuring tapes to this, the older children would be able to use it, and that they'd be able to transfer their knowledge and mathematical skills and give them that real and authentic feel of how maths can be used in the real world. So, numeracy is really everywhere. You just have to have an open and creative mind and you will find it. Here's a few examples of some of the natural resources I used to teach some numeracy outdoors. So we've got some patterns, we've got calculations, shapes, number building again, and we've got a little shop where the payment method actually was with natural resources. Anything that you use counters for indoors can be translated outdoors with natural resources. Something else skills usually have are pavements. Everybody has curbs near enough. Very quick activity. You can have children practicing their times tables or perhaps a little sequence for them to do. There are many games that can be transferred to outdoor learning. Here's a little one that I came up with myself. It's called Splat. It's a very adaptable game for all subjects. You just have to have the questions on here and the answers on the ground, and the children then have to splat the appropriate answer. If you don't feel comfortable about your children using water balloons, you could just use spray bottles. They work just as effectively. For older children, perhaps you would want to give them the freedom to make up their own games as well. I know that sometimes the more difficult concepts are really, really hard to teach and difficult to engage children. Perhaps the outdoors would make that easier. Children could have the opportunity to build fractions, do some data handling and collection, and measure. It injects some excitement as well into it, because I know sometimes they can be a little bit dry, particularly if children are finding them difficult. They don't really want to engage in them very much. However, this little girl here, she's called Isla. Isla was making a measuring gauge to see how much water, how much it rained the night before or the next night. She was so excited to get up the next day and see what the water level was. Perhaps you could do this. Perhaps if you had an older class, you could collect the data over a certain amount of time and then plot that on a graph. Extend children's learning further in an exciting way. Oh, it is so easy for other areas of the curriculum to be taught outdoors, and these include music, art, PE, the world around us, mindfulness, and more. I know if any of you are like me and have taught the younger ages as well, you will know of the headaches that follow some of the music lessons. Why not take them outdoors? Sound dissipates so much better when children are outdoors, and it makes it a more enjoyable experience for them. Here we have on the left a stage where the children are actually performing, and they have their audience as well, making it a much more enjoyable experience both for the children and for myself. Another area that you might want to tap into is for mindfulness and yoga, if you're thinking about using that. I think most schools will be as we return, just to complement the effects that COVID may have had on our children and try and promote their social and emotional well-being. You could use the chill out zone. What an area to do yoga or mindfulness, where children can have that sensory experience. They can see the clouds moving. They can feel the wind in their hair. They can touch the grass. They can hear the birds. It would be a really, really nice area for them. The outdoor environment provides opportunity, and the opportunities for play and learning in the outdoor environment are endless. They really are. There's some really good practice out there, and we should all be willing to share and tap into each other's practice. Just before I leave this page, I also wanted to add a little link with eco schools. We truly can't expect children to form connections and appreciate nature unless they're immersed in it themselves. I know Shawnee had previously touched on the fact that not all children are privileged enough to have the outdoor environment at their and their gardens, etc. So giving them that opportunity to connect with nature at school is really, really useful and very good for eco schools. So how are you going to evidence and celebrate all of this fantastic work that's going on, work, learning and play? So children, the best way to get children's points of view is actually for them to record the evidence too. So perhaps a couple of times you could get the children to take the cameras out themselves. I know this isn't feasible for all classrooms, but it's just an option. Something that I would have used is pic collage. Pic collage is really, really handy for collating all of those photographs, and then you can add a little caption as well. My top tip for using it would be to take group photographs, so that you are not actually taking individual pic collages for every child, because that would just be very time consuming. So cut down in your time, take group photographs, and then these can be transferred into individual books such as literacy and numeracy, or perhaps you want to do a class book. I've used a whole class book, and it actually was displayed in the foyer then. So when parents come in for drop off and pickups, they could actually look at the book and see what their children were doing, which was really nice. I've never used it, but I know some teachers have actually kept a digital book using the app Book Creator as well. So that's just another option for you. Displays, I love a display. I know many teachers do. A good display makes me happy. So I've created an outdoor display here. This is just one that promoted the areas of learning and had evidence surrounding them. And again, that progressed throughout the year. The pictures changed throughout the year to show children's learning. And this was just on a bit of plywood and could easily be moved. So whenever we had our celebrations, like end of year celebrations or assemblies, I was actually able to move this into the hall so parents could look at it as well. Newsletters and the website, and also Seesaw. I know that lots of you are using Seesaw and apps like it to communicate with parents and children at the moment. Great ways to share the learning and play that's taking part in your outdoor environment. Reflective practice. So I know that we are so reflective as teachers. We reflect in action, we reflect on action, we're continually reflecting in order to promote our children's well-being and education. So one thing that's really, really important, we need to actually think about our children's reflections in this. The outdoor environment is so different, and using playful activities, children are the play experts. They know more about play than you or I. Let them include their new creative ideas. I know I've sat in my lessons outdoors, and I thought this is not the way I had thought this would go. But actually, whenever I reflected on it and I seen the outcomes, it was actually better. Their ideas were better. So it's about having that mindset and that open mindset of letting the children get involved. And again, this will boost their self-esteem. For a child to see that their idea has actually been incorporated into the next steps will be amazing for them. And I'll give them that sense of value as well. It will maximise their engagement and ownership over their learning, and will also inform them of their next steps for learning. So it's nice for them to see where the progression's going as well. So how do we then include these thoughts and ideas in our reflections? I think the best time probably to grasp these would be at plenary time, where it's fresh in the children's minds. You might want to do this through graffiti boards, through the class book that I was mentioning before with the photographs. You might want to leave a page on it for children's ideas as well. You might want to use voting systems and quizzes such as Kahoot. I know Kahoot's excellent for quizzes. And if you're working with the younger children, you might want to do it through observations and comments. I know I always had sticky labels on me everywhere so that I could jot down anything that I seen or overheard that would have been reflective from children. So I've sort of whizzed through that, but here are key messages then from today. Allow children the permission, space and time to reconnect with their peers and friends on returning to school. Children's time for free play needs to be protected and not dismissed as a consequence of COVID-19 restrictions. The use of free and found resources, for example, loose parks, to create a fun and outdoor space. The use of the outdoor space for learning and play has never been as important as it is today. And remember, it's all fun and not only for the children. I'm just going to leave you with this quote. It's one that I used to love whenever I was teaching. And it says, "The best classroom and the richest cupboard is roofed only by the sky." Thank you all very much for joining us. I'm going to exit now.
Thank you, Bernadette.
No problem.
Thank you. Bang on time. We've 1 minute left. I'm not sure about questions. Lots of lovely ideas there coming through from your presentation, and also lots of lovely ideas coming through on the chat. So we will collate those. People are asking. We will collate those and send them out to you in a report following up after today. Not today, sometime next week. I've collated some questions. We don't have time. We are out of time, and it's Friday. I don't want to be holding on people. There's lots of questions there around loose parts and around the storage of loose parts outdoors. Some questions around the risk-benefit assessment that Shawnee spoke about. Questions around bad weather and being outdoors when it's bucketing down with rain, as we know in Northern Ireland it does. Some questions about zoning. And some questions right on at the beginning of the session around funding and grants for outdoor resources. So what I propose to do is we will, within the report that we're going to send you, we will answer some of those questions in there, if that's helpful for people. So just really to recap, as Bernadette has done there, and the recap is collating again what you've been telling us throughout, the key messages that are coming through here. It's about letting children reconnect, giving them the time, the space and the permission to play. The play is the key, so many people saying that. Use the outdoor space as much as possible. It's never been more important as it is now for getting children outdoors, both for play and learning, but particularly for that free play where they're wanting to reconnect with their friends again. Protect time. In fact, what we would say is offer more time, but protect time for free play. And that, when we talk about free play, it's that fun, carefree, spontaneous play that we've been talking about throughout the session. Use free and found resources, so loose parts, and we will send you a list. Lots of people were asking for a list of loose parts. We will send you that. Make schools, particularly outdoors, a place of fun, a playful place, and a place that supports children's well-being. And I think really coming out of this today, that has to be our final thought. That should be our priority when we go back to schools in late August, September. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you Bernadette and Shawnee. Totally out of our comfort zones here, particularly I had technical problems before we come on and had to change rooms and do all kinds of things. So thank you to you both. We didn't have any glitches as far as I'm aware. And thank you everybody for giving up your time joining us this morning. I hope you all have a lovely, lovely weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.